As some of you may know, I stirred quite a bee nest with my last video about the Clone Wars, expressing how much I hate it nowadays. If you're a newcomer or a fan of Cosmotard here, you might be like, how can I hate what could possibly be some of the best Star Wars content in your eyes? Yeah, TCW is nowhere close as a matter of fact. I've read, watched, or played at least 15 stories better than TCW in the Star Wars franchise, but a lot of it requires you to read, and we all know that a lot of people don't like reading. That doesn't mean, however, that you should just automatically ignore the book as a valid contender for best Star Wars content. I mean, how many of you have read the Darth Bane trilogy, for example? I'd imagine very few, and I doubt neither has Cosmotard. He commonly lies about being a book reader, but I can say firsthand that he'd be laughed out of any expanded universe book club if he tried to join, because he hasn't read squat. He just alludes to it to make himself sound like an expert, but doesn't acknowledge the books when it counts. Anyways, you're probably here for a response to one of Cosmotard's first Star Wars videos, and here I am happy to deliver.
Star Wars Clone Wars is the shit.
It's shit, correct. A highly overrated mess that broke so much continuity in the first 10 minutes of the Clone Wars movie, which no one even likes, but it's not like it gets any better, despite what filthy casuals will have you believe.
Now it's Star Wars season, and you know what that means. It means I'm not going to talk about anything related to that movie that just came out.
Oh yeah, that's right. This video was published during the relative release of Rogue One. If only Cosmotard would see how much things went down the shitter. I mean, he later went out of his way to defend the plagiarized copycat dumpster fire that was The Force Awakens. So I wouldn't expect anything less from him defending overrated yet accessible content.
Yeah. Now, if you watched Rogue One and you thought, gosh, you know, I really like that Star Wars spin-off stuff. I really wish there was more of that. Yeah, well, there is, idiot. It's called Clone Wars.
Or KOTOR, or Republic, or Darth Bane, or literally anything else made during Star Wars' golden age. Yeah, now that I think about it, the imaginary people Cosmotard's responding to probably think that Dave Filoni created Thrawn because that's how little range they have. Not like Cosmotard's is any wider.
And it was there the whole time. I've been saying it for years. I've been trying to explain to people for a long time how good this show is.
I'm guessing the people who don't listen to you probably know that there's some content to spend your time on.
It just has no right being as good as it is. But nobody believes me. And honestly, I don't really blame them, because I didn't believe people when they told me it was good.
Let me guess, because you're the most pandering prequel hater who ever lived?
Now, in this little rant, explanation, chill video, I'm gonna spoil a few things, but nothing huge, nothing major. I'm just doing it because you wouldn't believe me unless I use some of the examples I'm gonna use.
Ooh, I'm excited for the examples you're gonna give, because I've ripped on pretty much most of them in my review series of the Clone Wars, which put together is over 7 hours long. Link in description.
Anyway, Star Wars is really simple. It has a simple name. Star Wars. Wars in the stars. There's no question about what's going on here. There's no question about what the creators want you to feel in these original movies. That's a bad guy. This is good guys.
What the creators want you to feel? Oh, you mean like George Lucas? The man you're probably just gonna discredit immediately?
The thing that subverts this concept of simplicity is the prequel trilogy.
Yeah, and a billion people just couldn't accept that being simple and dumb was not solely what Star Wars is. This is the same dolt who said Star Wars should be simple, because that's just how far his intellect goes. Gosh forbid what Cosmotard thought of something like Knights of the Old Republic 2. That was probably too complex for a simple casual ass.
The prequel trilogy has no fucking morals.
Yeah, I guess we were supposed to interpret Anakin slaying the younglings and reach our own conclusion on whether it was right or wrong.
The heroes are assholes.
Flawed, buddy, not arseholes.
There's no quest. There's no goal. There's no anything.
Except destroying the Sith, of course, the most basic goal that the heroes try to achieve in these movies. But I guess being sidetracked by a big war was enough for this guy to think that the heroes have no end goal.
The villains are just incomprehensible.
Wow, you use pouts to make the prequels look bad? Like, not even Red Letter Media went that far.
Now, you guys have probably all heard this stuff from other people.
Speak of the devil.
So I'm not going to explain shit that you already know. You know that these movies suck. I'm not here to tell you that they suck.
I'd just like to mention that this guy acknowledged in a future video how many prequel fans he got, telling him how they love these movies, so that was a premature assumption you made there. Just assuming everyone dislikes these movies because they watch Plinkett without giving it critical thought. Remember when he tried giving the movie shit for not having a main character?
I'm here to tell you why this baby cartoon for children is way better.
You're not wrong about it being the stuff they play over at Weenie Hut Juniors. However, you are not correct about it being any better than these flicks.
In fact, it's some of the best Star Wars media that you can ask for.
Liar. Because the Clone Wars is literally the shit they spoon-feed to prequel haters to make them happy.
And I know you still don't believe me. I know you don't, so I'm just gonna keep going. First off, Clone Wars is an anthology series, which means it's not told in chronological order. It's just kind of like little stories thrown wherever they fit.
A series that did a piss poor job at mapping out the war. We're just thrown into a scenario with no context, battles don't play into another, and it's not like there's any gains made, because the Republic wins in every single battle. It's ridiculous how the war lasted for 3 years.
The first episode chronologically is episode 16 in season 2. That's just how it works.
Yeah, it seems like they were messing around all over the place for a show to be that disjointed.
Most of the time, the story arcs are presented in chunks of like 2 to 3 episodes, sometimes 4 if it's a really beefy, important arc.
All fillery because they just want to pad things out and waste your fucking time.
They're like 6 seasons, but by no means do you even have to watch all of it to have a good time. I didn't even watch every episode.
Something tells me that he skipped like 70 or 80% of the episodes and just skipped to the ones that he felt like watching. Like, this guy praises the Clone Wars, but then goes on to say that some of it's not that good.
Some of the episodes are just stupid. You don't need to watch them.
They're all stupid as a matter of fact. They play out like a crappy Saturday morning cartoon, and are pretty poorly written.
You can't make a 6-season show and have all of the episodes be bangers.
Yeah, with that attitude, this show had no chance as being as good as Breaking Bad, or any other show.
Anyway, let's talk about that sweet, sweet content. First of all, let me make something clear that you may not think much about on your own. George Lucas did not make this TV show.
Yeah, that's not entirely true. He created the show, and it wouldn't exist if not for him, but that's true of all Star Wars content until 2012. I guess the guy you want to look at for the meat of the show is this cowboy.
This show was made by people who really don't like the prequel trilogy, and they just wanted to make them better.
Gee, really? You show Sam Witwer on screen, and you try to tell me he's just like you? I guess he's correct in saying that Filoni doesn't like the prequels, because it comes off in the final show.
But their job wasn't to delete the prequel trilogy. They had to make it work, and instead of ignoring the content of episodes 1 through 3, they just kind of twist it a little bit and show you that how small changes would have made those movies so much better.
Or more a mess, more like, creating more continuity errors and so much more. Yeah, Cosmotard likes to spread this misconception that it's impossible to make a good story off of the prequels as they exist, and you gotta tweak what happened in them to make it enjoyable.
Wrong, sir. Wrong!
Have you ever seen the micro series, dude? That series preceded the one you're talking about, and it actually respected the source material and didn't conform to this mentality of, these movies aren't that good, we'll have to change them, which is an arse-backwards way of thinking.
Now, the thing that elevates this show beyond, like, average TV cartoon fashion is that all the characters that you hated in the prequels are completely likable in this show.
Yeah, I disagree heavily. I disliked a lot of the characters they changed, and fucking hated a certain underage stripper you'll get to soon.
Instead of Padme being a passive and emotionless plot device person, she's more like her daughter Leia. She's heroic, she's feisty, she gets shit done, she isn't afraid to crack a joke or like bitch somebody out or scream.
Bitch someone out or scream? Knowing this guy, I have to wonder how that makes a character likable in his eyes. Padme was like meh in the show. It didn't feel like there was really a use for her in the show, so it's odd that she's in this show as much as she is.
Obi-Wan, he's my favorite Star Wars character. He gets the fucking all-star treatment here because everybody likes Obi-Wan. He acts like your favorite uncle. You know, he's like wise, but he also makes really bad jokes, and he knows that the jokes are bad, but he just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, so far I prefer the prequels. There's a reason why they're so quotable. It wasn't because Obi-Wan was making cheesy, awful jokes every second.
You want to run?
I learned from watching you.
Funny.
That's just how he is. He acts like your pawpaw, you know, your daddy when he tells you a bad joke.
Do control your
Ugh. And then you show Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Count Dooku in the same room, which is like the laziest continuity error ever.
face insolence so I can concentrate.
Anakin, what? Control your insolence. The Count is concentrating.
Plus, he gets the best storylines. Obi-Wan, when he went to go kill General Grievous, that wasn't fun. That was really, really, really dumb.
But I'm guessing you're gonna shill for his imaginary rivalry with General Grievous in this show. Another continuity error.
Obi-Wan faking his death and becoming an undercover bounty hunter, that's a fun story. And you don't even know that you wanted that.
That was ironically like the only part of TCW that actually held up when I rewatched it. The ending was pretty bad though.
You ever wonder what Obi-Wan would do if he met up with the guy who fucking killed his master? The person who basically raised him? Yeah, that's a pretty good story. And you get to see shit like that in this show.
At the detriment of so much continuity. And as if we didn't already see that in The Phantom Menace. Like, did you ever watch the movie?
That's not even scratching the surface. You know what? You guys already like Obi-Wan. Everybody does. You know who nobody likes? Anakin the Skywalker.
Oh boy, here we go.
Now what if I told you that every problem with Anakin in these movies is completely solved in this show?
I would tell you that you're full of shit.
And you know what? I know that you don't believe me.
You read my fucking mind.
But I'm not fucking lying. Anakin is the saving grace of this show. I wasn't even gonna start this show unless I knew that Anakin was a good character. I thought I was asking for a lot. I thought that I just wasn't gonna start the show because I thought he was gonna be a piece of shit. But you know what? He's not. He's not a whiny, brooding, evil weirdo like he is in the prequels. He's a real fucking hero.
Not that you could actually appreciate really any of the character arcs in the prequels, because Anakin didn't conform to your expectations that he's gonna be some heroic badass Chad, when this is the same guy who became Darth Vader.
And he has realistic flaws. His relationship with Obi-Wan is way more reminiscent of how Obi-Wan described it in A New Hope.
He was the best star pilot in the galaxy, and a cunning warrior. And he was a good friend.
You know that Obi-Wan also lies to Luke in the scene too, you know?
Yeah, he was a good friend, because you can tell. They joke around with each other. They disagree sometimes, but they never really have like big fights because they're friends. And they respect each other's choices.
Yeah, Attack of the Clones had the same shit too. It's just that people didn't pay attention. And they just expected them to be gay lovers or something.
What took you so long? Oh, you know, Master. I couldn't find a speeder that I really liked.
He's a guy who wants nothing more than just to save as many people as possible and stop people from dying. They show you that that's a really selfish and unrealistic goal. There's episodes where people just tell Anakin that he can't always have what he wants.
Yeah, also in the prequel trilogy.
Batman! Put the ship down!
Anakin! Don't let your personal feelings get in the way!
I don't care! Put the ship down!
You will be expelled from the Jedi Order!
I can't leave her!
Come to your senses! What do you think Padme would do were she in your position?
Instead of throwing a fucking tantrum and killing people like a maniac, he has a real internal conflict about how to cope with his flaws.
So when he loses his mother to savages, or believes his wife sent Obi-Wan to kill him, that wasn't a real enough struggle for you? Yeah, you need to watch the movies again. And read Star Wars Republic. Did you know there's an issue where Anakin lashes out at a human-born Tusken Jedi?
That's the way it's done.
After watching really good stories with this version of Anakin, you kind of start to forget about this one a little bit. You kind of start to forget about
Don't make me kill you.
how he turns out.
Playing a line out of context and hope people will cringe at it.
And it'll kind of bum you out to remember that the guy you're rooting for is eventually just gonna become some kind of fucked up monster.
Are you talking about Anakin or Vader here? I really can't tell.
Anakin's totally fine with just killing people in order to save his friends. He doesn't see any problem with that. While the other characters, they don't really like that too much. That's more interesting than just having him be evil and murdering innocent people.
Who's willing to bet that he sees Tusken Raiders as innocents? I also don't understand how him killing innocent people doesn't make for good drama. I mean, like, he hesitated to kill those younglings, for example. It was a test to see if he had the guts, and by this point, he felt like there was no going back, and so on and so forth. That's what happens when you assess these movies properly.
Oh, by the way, people die in this show like it's going out of fucking style.
Thanks for reminding me that the character you just showed had her death retconned. Her original death was at a time General Grievous wasn't useless.
This show is way darker than you'd expect it to be.
He says while he plays a trope that always takes me out of a story. The villain kills his own men cliche. God, I hate that trope.
Anyway, back to the characters. The new characters in the show are also welcome additions to the Star Wars canon.
He says canon as he shows Ahsoka Tano, the most hammed-in Star Wars afterthought that ever existed.
Ahsoka seems like this annoying, plucky, scrappy-doo sidekick, but she's not that at all. She's fully capable of just taking care of herself. She's never annoying because she just says shit that the viewer's thinking. She really hates the stringent and like weird, annoying rules of the Jedi, but she still believes in their duty, you know, to be peaceful, be a good guy, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I fucking hate Ahsoka. Oversaturated as shit, poorly written, sexualized despite being underage, and so on.
This also leads to a lot of interesting character stuff with Anakin, because he also doesn't like the Jedi. He fucking hates them, but he has to pretend to be someone he's not when he's around Ahsoka because he has to set a good example.
Yeah, and after reading the comics, there's no Ahsoka to be seen. What a breath of fresh air. Since we're forced to spend the whole show with this bitchy brat.
That's something that this guy wouldn't have done. He doesn't really seem like a good role model.
As if Anakin in TCW is either. I mean, Anakin in TCW is a casual war criminal who passes off false surrendering as a joke. Revenge of the Sith doesn't portray his crimes like a joke, but actually play it for horror.
Another character that's exclusive to the show is Asajj Ventress.
Wrong, dude. She was in the micro series. I've also read Obi-Wan and Anakin's actual first encounter with Asajj Ventress, in which she's also paired up with Dirge, and they brutalize pretty much every other Jedi there and give the duo a hard time. Like, you wouldn't believe it if you didn't read it, but here it is.
Some of you probably already know. She's really similar to Ahsoka, but on the dark side. She was raised to believe that rage and anger are really the only ideals to live by. And eventually she learns that that's just not how life is. She starts doing her own thing. She starts finding out who she is without other people just getting in the way and telling her how to think.
You probably already know this, but I prefer the Ventress in the micro series and comics. Much more sinister, actually does shit, and doesn't have a shitty redemption arc or whatever.
Now before I move away from the characters, I have to talk about one more person. Darth fucking Maul.
One of the biggest retcons ever.
Now, it's no spoiler that Darth Maul returns in this show. I think everybody knows that. I'm just gonna tell you that Darth Maul being in this show is the best shit you've never seen.
Or one of the most overrated things ever. Darth Maul really didn't do much in the show. I know this came out after this video, but he loses to Ahsoka Tano when he clearly should have won because, you know, he's Darth Maul and Ahsoka's not even an adult yet. Yeah, that's another problem. This show sucks at power level scaling. This show just has X weaker character win if the plot demands it.
Don't worry about the weird spider legs. He gets normal legs pretty quickly. I feel like I have to tell people that because the leg thing really turns him off. He gets normal legs.
Right off the bat, he's trying to assure the viewer that the awful start of this character doesn't last for long.
After that, he goes on a murderous rampage across the galaxy. He just goes fucking rogue. This leads to a battle against entire armies and Obi-Wan in an attempt to just become one guy who's just ruling the galaxy. It's so much cooler than I can put it in words.
If you've seen my review, you know how I described something like the fight between Maul and Osama bin Vizsla.
I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior!
His ultimate goal is just getting revenge on Obi-Wan for humiliating him. And you know what? Obi-Wan doesn't take this revenge plot like a bitch. For the first time, you can see Obi-Wan really struggle with the dark side. He wants revenge so badly for Qui-Gon Jinn, but he knows better than anybody how the dark side can really mess you up.
If there's anything in TCW I've forgotten, it's this. Obi-Wan being lured over to the dark side or whatever. I can't even tell if Cosmotard's being honest here, or this actually happened in the show the way he's describing. I thought the conflict between Obi-Wan and Maul was so lame.
He starts to really lose his cool more than he ever has, and for the first time he struggles to find the right answers. And that makes Darth Maul so fucking happy, because all he wants to do is just torment and humiliate Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's fucking Shakespearean.
And he just does a piss poor job of doing it.
The one downside to all of this is that it ends on a cliffhanger. But you know what? That's okay. That's perfectly fine. Because the storyline is continued in Rebels. Because it brings back all the plot lines that were dropped when this show was cancelled.
And then he goes on to dunk on Rebels in a future video. I don't like that show either, but I love how he's trying to defend an inconclusive cliffhanger with another shitty show.
That's a luxury that most cancelled shows don't get. Now, some more things that I kind of like about the show that I want to mention. It should be stated that the show fucking looks amazing.
In the later seasons perhaps, but it looked like Steam shovelware in the earlier ones.
It looks surprisingly cinematic sometimes. You start to forget that you're watching a TV show. It just looks like a movie. Now, Lucas also let the creators just kind of use whatever content they wanted, which means that the universe feels a lot larger than the movies let it be.
This show makes the universe feel smaller, actually. As I said, they do a poor job of mapping out the war, and it doesn't matter how many new locations you bring in. This problem is never solved.
And I know that's a complaint that people are starting to throw around about the newer movies. They just dart around planets and locales so quickly that you barely feel like they're even on different planets. But here you get stories with characters that you don't know, on planets that you spend a lot of time on, so you get pretty familiar with them, doing adventures that you want to watch.
The Sifo-Dyas one. I can't even remember anything about that aside from the shit they retconned, like having Anakin and Obi-Wan fight Dooku before Revenge of the Sith. Again.
On top of that, everything in the show is canon, if that's something that you're worried about.
It's the most embarrassing canon to ever exist.
Honestly, I could just really keep rambling on about how much I love this show. I like this show so much. It's so easy to watch. It doesn't feel like a huge commitment, yet when you watch it, it's still really engaging. You start to really appreciate Star Wars. You start really getting into these characters that you thought you hated. Characters that you've never seen a good interpretation of.
That's what happens when you're a filthy casual who hates the prequels and watches a show that indulges every criticism you have, and hampers to you in a show that's supposed to be about the movies you hated. What a paradox.
Now, there are some really dumb things that I should warn you about. Like I said, some episodes are just not as good as other episodes. And Jar Jar is still a piece of shit. And I wish they didn't even try to put him in this show.
I don't know, man. The team up between him and Mace Windu was actually pretty interesting, and like one of the few saving grace episodes.
Luckily, they understood their mistake pretty early on, and he's not in a lot of episodes. He's pretty easy to avoid. Also, Season 1 is mostly bad.
The whole show is bad, dude.
Season 1 existed at a time when the creators were kind of afraid to try the more daring stories.
Reckless. Not daring.
Plus, the animation is still kind of, not finished yet, so it's pretty ugly. Each season ups the quality of the visuals, by a lot. Season 2 brings things up significantly compared to Season 1. And I honestly recommend that anybody start with the episodes The Mandalore Plot and Voyage of Temptation.
Only if you know jack shit about Mandalorians, of course, or don't care seeing them be pacifists for some weird reason.
This is a pretty good entry point to how the show feels, and it's also pretty important for the overarching story between Obi-Wan and his, ex-girlfriend lady. Trust me, that is way cooler than it sounds, and I never thought I'd say that I like a storyline about Obi-Wan Kenobi's ex-girlfriend. But hey, I'm not fucking questioning it anymore.
A lot of people say that Siri Tachi was better.
After that, I'd probably jump into the Night Sisters arc, which is right here, if you want to see that. And from there, you can kind of just jump around wherever you want. Just don't really touch Season 1 too much. There's some episodes in there that are pretty good, but for the most part, it's not that great. If you want to watch the Darth Maul stuff right after you finish Night Sisters, you can just do that. The episodes are right here. Just have a fucking blast, because it's a long roller coaster ride.
Darth Maul Shadowhunter is arguably longer, and that's way better. It actually portrays Maul like he was in the films, and it's still made for a compelling story. Despite prequel haters' complaints that he had no character because they don't understand that he's a henchman of the main villain.
If you really just want to watch some good-ass stories, Personally, I'm going to recommend Bounty Hunter Obi-Wan. That's those episodes right there. The Umbara arc, which is right here. Also, Ashoka's last arc is fucking brilliant. That's the last episode that they came out with before the show got canceled.
The only one you listed that holds up last I watched it was the Obi-Wan Bounty Hunter arc. Although I know some people who really don't like it.
But honestly, I'd recommend you watch some episodes with her before that, like Lightsaber Lost. That's a pretty good Ashoka episode. Anyway, if there's a plot element that you want to know more about, that you feel like you kind of missed by jumping around, you can just go backwards and watch the episode for it. If you don't want to jump around at all, and you want to watch the whole thing and just truck through it, I'd honestly just skip season 1 and start on 2. And then just skip the ones that sound stupid. Like, don't watch Jar Jar episodes. You deserve better than that.
I love how you can't even watch the whole show, even though a lot of the pivotal stuff was in season 1 and the movie.
That's the thing about this show, you get a lot of freedom. You can kind of just do whatever you want, just watch it at your own leisure. It's not like a huge commitment. It's easy to watch, but it's also really engaging. Plus, this show is all on Netflix. It's been on Netflix for like ever, the whole thing, even the Lost episodes. Like, they just want you to watch it. You don't have any excuses.
Yeah, like a lot of filthy casuals, I watched this shit on Netflix, loved it, and then years later I decided to widen my range after hearing that this isn't the only version of the Clone Wars. That led me to Star Wars Republic, which is what deserved all the recognition instead of Dave Filoni's Cowboy Wonderland. But TCW obviously ended up being way more popular because it's more accessible.
If you love Star Wars like me, and desperately want good stories with characters that have a lot of potential, please, just give it a shot. And if you end up liking it, I don't need any thanks. I just want to know that I spread the good word. Because Star Wars fans deserve good media outside of these movies. I like the movies. But you know what? I want to watch a TV show sometimes. And it's waiting right there. It's right there. Just click on it. It's right in front of...
And that's how he ends this video. Well, safe to say that nowadays, I despise the Clone Wars. And I can't believe I liked it at one point. You can actually watch my review series, where I thought I still liked it, but as I go season after season, I think lower and lower of this show, until we get to season 7, which is like the worst one. All 3 arcs were terrible, and people treat Siege of Mandalore like it's some masterpiece, but it's horrible as a matter of fact. It's got so many plot holes and poor writing, which I elaborate on in my review series, that a lot of Clone Wars fans never thought about. But once you realize it, you realize that the episodes are just poorly written. Like when Ahsoka lets Darth Maul go to save her own skin, and then later goes on about how she doesn't want to harm the other clones to Rex, when she also let Maul go, who went on a motherfucking rampage, and it's all Ahsoka's fault. And he got away. Also Ahsoka's fault. A lot of the episodes from seasons 1 to 6 are also pretty poorly written too. But you get the point. Now, Star Wars Republic is the actual Clone Wars. It doesn't change characters to appeal to prequel haters, introduces a lot of new characters that are compelling like Master Thome, is pretty hardcore at times to the point where it blows this toddler show out of the water, and everything I just said in this video about TCW are negated with Republic. They do a brilliant job mapping out the war. The Republic can actually lose battles, they don't resurrect characters because people complained about them dying, and told compelling stories without pandering to prequel haters. The comics already assume you like the prequels, and they don't retract from the movies. One of the main stars of Republic, Quinlan Vos, is featured in an episode of TCW, and they completely butchered him. The serious, no-nonsense Jedi is turned into a goofball, and Obi-Wan speaks of him like he's the weird kid at school, when they're actually supposed to be good friends. Like Star Wars Republic issue 69 has the front cover being them together about to fight some droids. These comics are far more unbiased towards the movies, and is way better than Dave Filoni's Cowboy show. And it's not like Republic is exclusively the Clone Wars. Republic actually started in 1998, before the release of The Phantom Menace, showcasing Ki-Adi-Mundi as the first prequel Jedi we were introduced to. Then it just builds and builds from there. We get Quinlan Vos as mentioned before, and Ayla Secura, who was actually introduced in the comics, and then George decided to put her in Attack of the Clones. Also Master Thome, who I mentioned earlier. And film characters are also way more faithful to the films, and didn't miss the trick like TCW did. Anakin is still the angry hothead he was in Attack of the Clones, and they expand on that to great success. I mentioned how he lashed out at a Tusken Jedi, and it actually got the Jedi in question, Asherad Het, to finally unmask himself. Basically, so Anakin might potentially see him as an equal, and not as a dirty Tusken Raider who brutalized his mother. At the end of the issue, he asks Anakin whether or not he'd slaughter the Tusken Raiders again, after all he's been through. And he replies yes. And when I read that, it was scary as fuck. Anakin doesn't regret his decision. His desire for revenge is still there. And they made a compelling story with Anakin without turning him into this stale, flat character made to appeal to people who don't even like the prequels in a show based on the prequels. Yeah, I prefer Republic a lot. Far more unbiased, better written, more compelling and better Star Wars content than TCW. But then again, so is a lot of Star Wars content. But good luck convincing Cosmotard to read something like this. He'd rather stick to his TCW delusions. For the rest of you, I hope you can spend some time to read Star Wars Republic. I know a website where you can read it, but I'd rather not say because I don't know if it's piracy or not. Although I've never gotten into trouble for reading on it. So I'll probably just name the website on a pinned comment, because you can pretty much read all Star Wars comics on this website. It's actually handy for videos I've made about Star Wars comics, because I can download every page as a PNG file, in high definition easily. With that being said, I'm JJ Plagiarisms, and until next time, what are stories about mystery boxes?
Under the mountain, the golden fountain, where you